Pause. Before your mind races forward, before logic interrupts what your soul already knows, before you dismiss this as another video in an endless scroll, stop. Because this moment is not random. Out of infinite frequencies moving through the fabric of reality, something guided your attention here. Not coincidence, not algorithm, but resonance. You stopped scrolling because a part of you, deeper than thought, older than memory, recognized a signal it has been waiting for. This is not entertainment. This is not information. This is activation. And activation does not ask for belief. It asks for presence. So take a breath. Feel the weight of your body. Notice the subtle shift in your awareness that happened the moment you began reading these words. That shift is real. That shift is the beginning of something irreversible, and if you feel it, even faintly, then you are exactly where you need to be. Because thresholds do not appear twice in the same form, and you are standing at one right now. Some transmissions are whispered across lifetimes, encoded in moments of stillness, waiting for the precise intersection of readiness and timing. This is one of those transmissions, and it found you because your frequency has been shifting slowly, imperceptibly, preparing you for this exact convergence. You may not have noticed it consciously, but your reality has been reorganizing around you. Patterns breaking, synchronicities increasing, old relationships dissolving, new possibilities emerging without effort, people suddenly seeing you differently, opportunities appearing in unexpected forms, dreams becoming more vivid, more symbolic, more insistent. These are not random events, they are symptoms of coherence. Your internal signal is stabilizing, and the quantum field is beginning to respond. And the reason you are here now is because you have crossed a threshold of readiness that most people never reach. Not because you are special in the egoic sense, but because you have done the invisible work of staying open when it would have been easier to close, of questioning when it would have been safer to accept, of feeling when it would have been more comfortable to numb. And that openness has created a space within you that can now hold what is about to unfold. Let me be clear about something from the beginning. This is not a motivational speech. This is not positive thinking repackaged in mystical language. This is a transmission about the mechanics of reality itself, about how consciousness and matter interact, about why your life looks the way it does, and how it can reorganize in ways that will feel both miraculous and inevitable once you understand the principles at work. Because most people move through their entire existence believing they are separate from the world they experience, that reality happens to them, that circumstances are external, that change requires force, strategy, manipulation of conditions. But this is a fundamental misunderstanding of how existence operates. Reality is not external, it is relational. It is a conversation between your internal state and the quantum field, a field that does not distinguish between inner and outer, between thought and matter, between expectation and manifestation. The field responds, always, precisely, neutrally, and what it responds to is not your wishes, not your hopes, not your affirmations, but your embodied frequency, the signal your nervous system is broadcasting beneath conscious awareness, shaped by every unresolved pattern, every unconscious belief, every somatic memory stored in tissue and bone. And this is where most teachings fail. They focus on the mind while ignoring the body. They emphasize intention while overlooking embodiment. They promise transformation while leaving the nervous system in survival mode. Still bracing for disappointment, still preparing for loss, still broadcasting the frequency of someone who has learned that support is unreliable, that recognition is scarce, that abundance requires proof. And as long as that frequency remains active, reality will continue to reflect it back with perfect accuracy. Not as punishment, not as failure, but as coherence, because the field maintains relational consistency. It gives you more of what you are, not what you want to be. And this is why effort alone does not work, why positive thinking feels hollow, why visualization without embodiment produces nothing, because the body never lies. The body transmits the truth of your expectations through breath, through posture, through micro-movements, through the way your muscles hold tension or release it. And those transmissions are constant, unconscious, and extraordinarily precise, shaping probability, collapsing potential, determining who shows up, what opportunities appear, what obstacles persist. So the question is not whether you can change your reality, the question is whether you can change your signal. And changing your signal is not about thinking differently, it is about inhabiting your body differently, it is about training your nervous system to expect support instead of threat, to anticipate ease instead of struggle, to remain open instead of braced. And this training is subtle. It does not happen through force or willpower. It happens through repeated micro-experiences of safety, through allowing yourself to receive without earning, to rest without justifying, to exist without performing. And every time you do this, every time you consciously soften your breath, release your jaw, drop your shoulders, slow your pace, you are sending a signal to the field that says the environment has changed, that you are no longer operating from survival, that you are ready to receive. And the field responds to that signal by delivering experiences that match the new frequency, not immediately, not dramatically, but cumulatively, through small adjustments in timing, in encounters, in opportunities that arrive without force, in resistance that dissolves before confrontation. And this is where trust becomes essential. Not blind faith, but somatic trust, the willingness to remain open even when old patterns attempt to reassert themselves, even when the mind seeks proof, even when progress feels too subtle to celebrate. Because the nervous system, accustomed to struggle, interprets ease as danger. It reads calm as stagnation. It mistakes lack of effort for lack of progress, and this misinterpretation can pull you back into striving, collapsing the coherence that was forming. So awareness during this phase must be embodied, present, patient. You must learn to recognize the difference between productive action and defensive activity, between alignment and distraction, between genuine intuition and fear disguised as urgency. And this discernment does not come from the mind. It comes from the body, from learning to feel the difference between contraction and expansion, between tightening and softening, between moving from fear and moving from flow. And the more you practice this, the more your baseline state begins to shift, the more your default expectation changes from effort to alignment. And as that shift stabilizes, reality reorganizes around it in ways that feel natural rather than miraculous, which is precisely why many people overlook it, because transformation does not always announce itself. It unfolds quietly, through conversations that flow differently, through obstacles that dissolve before being confronted, through opportunities that appear without chasing. And these changes may seem insignificant at first, but they are markers, confirmations that the signal has shifted, that the body is no longer broadcasting threat, that the field is no longer delivering resistance. And this is where conscious participation becomes critical, because noticing reinforces coherence, acknowledging reinforces alignment, and gratitude reinforces stability, not because the field needs gratitude, but because gratitude tells the body it is safe to receive more, and safety is the gateway to expansion. And expansion is the natural consequence of coherence. And as your system stabilizes in this new frequency, you may notice a deeper change, a subtle redefinition of identity, where you no longer see yourself as someone trying to change reality, but as someone participating in it, co-creating with it, responding to it, and being responded to in return. And this shift dissolves urgency, dissolves desperation, dissolves the sense that something is missing, because the internal state of acknowledgement has been established. And from that state, action becomes aligned rather than reactive. Choices become intuitive rather than forced, and purpose begins to emerge organically rather than through struggle. Now, if you are still here, if you have read this far without distraction, it tells me something important. It tells me your nervous system is already beginning to recalibrate. Because attention itself is a form of coherence, and sustained attention in the presence of resonant information creates neural reorganization. Your brain is literally rewiring as you read these words, forming new connections, dissolving old patterns, preparing pathways for experiences that were previously inaccessible because your frequency did not match them. And this is not metaphor. This is neuroplasticity meeting quantum mechanics. This is consciousness reshaping biology in real time. And the fact that you can feel this, even subtly, even as a quiet pressure behind your chest or a strange sense of recognition, means the process is already underway. And once begun, it does not reverse. It deepens, it stabilizes, and it begins to reorganize everything that follows. Which is why this moment matters, why this transmission exists, why the timing of your arrival here is not random. Because you are being prepared for something that requires a different baseline than the one you have been operating from, something that will not fit into the old patterns, the old fears, the old identity. And that preparation is happening now, invisibly, beneath the surface of your conscious awareness, as your system learns to hold a frequency it has been moving toward for longer than you realize. Let me take you deeper now into the mechanics of what is actually happening beneath the surface of your experience. Because understanding is not just intellectual satisfaction. Understanding creates permission, and permission dissolves resistance. So listen carefully. Your body is not separate from the quantum field. It is an expression of it, a localized density of the same field that permeates all of space, time, and matter. And this field is not static, it is responsive. It is alive with potential, with probability waves that collapse into form based on observation, expectation, and most importantly, coherent signal. And your nervous system is the primary transmitter of that signal. Not your thoughts, not your words, not your intentions, but the autonomic state your body is holding moment to moment, shaped by patterns laid down long before you had language to describe them. Patterns formed in the first years of life when your system was learning what to expect from the world, whether reaching out resulted in care or disappointment, whether expression was met with attunement or dismissal, whether your needs were responded to consistently or unpredictably. And those experiences, repeated thousands of times, created a neural template, a baseline expectation that now operates automatically, unconsciously, shaping your posture, your breath, your muscle tension, and through those your energetic broadcast. And here is the critical insight. The quantum field does not respond to content, it responds to coherence, to the clarity and stability of the signal being transmitted, and a nervous system stuck in survival mode, constantly scanning for threat, constantly bracing for disappointment, constantly preparing for effort, transmits a scattered, incoherent signal. And scattered signals produce scattered results. Delays, obstacles, opportunities that require more proving, more striving, more patience. Not because the universe is testing you, but because that is the frequency you are broadcasting, and the field, being relational, mirrors it back with precision. But when the nervous system shifts out of survival and into a state of regulated openness, something extraordinary happens. The signal becomes coherent, focused, clear, and coherent signals reorganize probability fields rapidly, synchronicities increase, timing improves, resources appear, people respond differently, not because you are manipulating circumstances, but because your frequency has changed and the field is reflecting the new broadcast. And this is not magic. This is physics. This is how consciousness and matter interact at the quantum level. And once you understand this, once you feel it in your body rather than just conceptualizing it in your mind, everything changes, because you realize that transformation is not about doing more, it is about being different, about inhabiting a state that assumes support is normal, that care is available, that recognition does not need to be chased. And this assumption is not arrogance. It is neutrality. It is the calm expectation that the field is responsive, that your signal matters, that reality adjusts to coherence. And when that expectation stabilizes, when it becomes your baseline rather than an exception, the conversation with the field changes. The delays shorten, the resistance softens, and life begins to feel less like something you must push through and more like something that meets you halfway. And this shift is cumulative. Each moment of coherence reinforces the next. Each experience of support strengthens the baseline. Each conscious breath deepens the signal until a new normal is established. And from that new normal, realities that seemed impossible from the old state become accessible, natural, inevitable, not because you force them into being, but because your frequency finally matched them, and the field, ever responsive, collapsed probability in your favor, not as reward, not as luck, but as coherence expressing itself through form. And this is the secret that most never learn, because the dominant paradigm teaches effort over embodiment, action over alignment, force over flow. But those who understand frequency, those who learn to stabilize coherence, those who train their nervous system to broadcast from safety rather than survival, discover that reality is far more responsive than they were ever told. That change can happen without struggle. That support can arrive without earning. That life can reorganize around you when you stop fighting it and start resonating with it. Now let me address something that may be arising in your awareness right now. A subtle resistance. A quiet voice that says this sounds too simple, too good, too easy. And that voice is not wrong to be skeptical. It is doing what it was designed to do, which is protect you from disappointment by lowering expectations. But here is what that voice does not understand. Simplicity is not the same as easy. And what I am describing is simple in concept, but requires profound commitment in practice. Because shifting your baseline frequency is not a one-time decision. It is a continuous choice made moment by moment, breath by breath, in the face of every trigger, every old pattern, every situation that invites you to collapse back into survival mode. And that choice requires awareness. It requires presence. It requires the willingness to notice when your body is tightening, when your breath is shallow, when your thoughts are spinning into worst-case scenarios, and to consciously interrupt that pattern, not by forcing positivity, not by denying fear, but by creating space, by softening, by allowing, by reminding your nervous system that it is safe to remain open, even in uncertainty. And this practice is subtle. It does not look impressive from the outside. There are no dramatic breakthroughs, no explosive realizations, no moments of cosmic glory, just quiet, consistent, embodied recalibration. Day after day, breath after breath, until the new baseline stabilizes, until coherence becomes automatic, until your default state is alignment rather than defense. And this is where most people give up, not because the process does not work, but because they expect linear progress and instant results. They expect reality to reorganize overnight, and when it does not, when the changes remain subtle and cumulative, they interpret that as failure and abandon the practice, returning to the old patterns, the old frequency, the old results. But transformation does not work that way. It works through accumulation, through small shifts compounding over time, through invisible recalibrations that eventually reach a tipping point where the external reality suddenly reorganizes to match the internal shift that has been building for weeks or months. And when that reorganization happens, it feels sudden, miraculous, like everything changed at once. But it did not change at once. It changed gradually, beneath the surface, in ways that were too subtle to track consciously until the accumulated coherence reached critical mass and collapsed into form. And this is why patience is not passive. Patience is active trust. It is the willingness to continue practicing even when results are not yet visible, to continue softening even when the mind demands proof, to continue breathing even when the body wants to brace. Because every moment of practice matters, every breath of coherence counts, every choice to remain open rather than contract is sending a signal to the field, and the field is responding, always, even when you cannot see it yet. So if you are feeling resistance right now, if part of you is pulling back, questioning, doubting, let that be okay. Do not fight it, do not shame it, just notice it. Because that resistance is information. It is showing you where your nervous system still believes that safety requires vigilance, that openness invites harm, that trust is dangerous. And those beliefs were adaptive once. They kept you safe when your environment was genuinely unpredictable or unsafe. But they are not serving you anymore. They are keeping you stuck in a frequency that no longer matches the reality you are ready to create. And recognizing that, feeling that, allows the pattern to begin loosening, not through force, through awareness. Because consciousness reorganizes systems simply by observing them without judgment. And as you observe your resistance without collapsing into it or fighting against it, something subtle begins to shift. The grip loosens, the tension softens, and space opens for a new possibility. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, it is safe to receive, safe to trust, safe to allow reality to support you without demanding proof first. And that possibility, once entertained, begins to alter your frequency, subtly at first, but cumulatively, and cumulative shifts create permanent change. Let me take you even deeper now into the relational nature of reality itself. Because what I am describing is not just personal psychology, it is ontology. It is the fundamental structure of existence. And understanding this shifts everything, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And once you feel it, you cannot unfeel it. So stay with me here. Reality is not a fixed stage upon which you perform. It is a living field of potential that responds to your presence. And that response is not metaphorical, it is literal. Quantum mechanics has demonstrated that observation collapses probability waves into definite outcomes, that the act of measurement affects what is being measured, that consciousness and matter are not separate but intimately entangled. And while the scientific establishment struggles with the implications of this, mystics have known it for millennia, that awareness shapes reality, that attention directs energy, that expectation influences outcome, not through magical thinking, but through the mechanics of how consciousness interfaces with the quantum field, and your body is the interface, your nervous system is the transmitter, and the signal it broadcasts is determined by your somatic state, by whether your system is in ventral vagal regulation or dorsal vagal shutdown or sympathetic activation. And each of those states transmits a different frequency, and each frequency collapses different probabilities. And this is why two people can take the same action and get completely different results, because the action is not what matters. The frequency behind the action is what matters. Someone operating from sympathetic activation, from urgency and fear and desperation, can work twice as hard and get half the results of someone operating from ventral vagal regulation, from calm and openness and trust. because the field responds not to effort but to coherence, and coherence is a parasympathetic state. It is the nervous system operating from safety, from connection, from the knowledge that resources are available and support is present. And when you can sustain that state, not just intellectually but somatically, in your body, in your breath, in your posture, reality reorganizes around it. Doors open, timing aligns, people appear, opportunities emerge, not because you manipulated circumstances, but because your frequency changed and the field reflected the new broadcast. And this is why spiritual bypassing fails, why affirmations without embodiment produce nothing, why visualization without nervous system regulation is just fantasy, because the mind can say anything, but the body tells the truth, and the field responds to truth, not story. So if your body is holding the pattern of someone who learned that care is conditional, that recognition must be earned, that support is unreliable, no amount of positive thinking will override that transmission. The field will continue delivering experiences that match the embodied expectation, not the conscious wish. And this is not cruelty. This is coherence. The field maintaining relational consistency with your actual state, not your aspirational one. But here is the profound gift in this understanding. If your reality is a reflection of your frequency, then changing your reality does not require changing external circumstances. It requires changing your internal state. And while you cannot directly control circumstances, you can absolutely influence your nervous system, you can practice regulation, you can create experiences of safety, you can train your body to expect support. And as that training deepens, as the new baseline stabilizes, circumstances reorganize without force, not because you made them change, but because your frequency changed and the field responded. And this is the shift from doing to being, from effort to embodiment, from manipulation to alignment, and it is the most powerful shift you can make. Because once you understand that you are not separate from the field but in constant conversation with it, that your internal state is continuously broadcasting and the external world is continuously responding, you realize that you have far more influence than you thought. Not through control, through coherence. And coherence is something you can practice, something you can cultivate, something you can stabilize, until it becomes your new normal, until operating from alignment feels more natural than operating from effort, until support feels more expected than struggle, until receiving feels safer than chasing. And as this understanding deepens, you may notice something extraordinary happening in your direct experience, a softening, a release, a quiet sense that you do not have to hold everything together anymore, that you can let your breath deepen, that you can allow your shoulders to drop, that you can trust just for this moment that you are held, and that trust, even if it lasts only seconds, is a signal, a transmission, a message to the field that says something has changed, and the field receives that message and begins to respond, not tomorrow, not next week, but now, in ways you may not consciously register yet, but your system is already feeling a subtle easing, a slight opening, a sense of possibility that was not there before, and that possibility is not imagination, it is real, it is the beginning of probability reorganization, the first ripple of the shift you have been moving toward. And if you can stay with it, if you can allow it without grasping or forcing, it will deepen, it will stabilize, and it will begin to manifest in ways that will feel both surprising and inevitable. Because that is how coherence works. It does not announce itself, it simply arrives, quietly, naturally, as if it was always meant to be this way. So let me invite you now into a practice, not something you do later, something you do right now as you read these words. Notice your breath. Do not change it, just notice it. Is it shallow or deep, fast or slow, held or flowing? Just observe without judgment, and as you observe, allow it to deepen slightly, not by force, just by permission. As if your body has been waiting for permission to breathe fully, and you are finally giving it. And as your breath deepens, notice what happens in your body. Does your chest expand? Do your shoulders release? Does your jaw soften? Just notice. And stay with that noticing for a few breaths. Because this is the practice. This is how coherence is cultivated, not through grand gestures or dramatic techniques, but through simple embodied presence, through noticing, through allowing, through creating micro moments of safety that teach your nervous system it is okay to let go. And every time you do this, every time you consciously soften and breathe and allow, you are retraining your system. You are sending a new signal. You are broadcasting a different frequency. And the field is receiving it and responding to it in ways that may not be visible yet but are absolutely real. And this is where I want to pause and acknowledge something. If you have read this far, if you have stayed present through thousands of words of dense layered transmission, it means something. It means your system is ready. It means your frequency has shifted enough to hold this information without deflecting it. It means you are not just reading words but receiving a transmission. And that reception is changing you, subtly, irreversibly. Because information is not neutral. Coherent information reorganizes consciousness, and consciousness reorganizes biology, and biology reorganizes behavior, and behavior reorganizes circumstance, and circumstance reorganizes reality. So what you are experiencing right now is not just intellectual understanding, it is initiation, it is activation, it is the beginning of a process that, once begun, cannot be stopped, only deepened, only stabilized, only allowed to unfold in its own timing. And that timing is not something you control, it is something you surrender to, because surrender is not weakness. Surrender is alignment. It is the recognition that you do not have to force transformation. You just have to allow it. And allowing begins with this breath, this moment, this willingness to remain present even when the mind wants to jump ahead or the body wants to contract. Because presence is power, presence is coherence, and coherence is what changes everything. Now let me take you into the final layer of this transmission, the layer where understanding becomes embodiment, where concept becomes experience, where information becomes integration, because everything I have shared up to this point has been preparation, context, foundation, but now we cross into direct experience, into the felt sense of what it means to operate from coherence, and this cannot be explained, it can only be experienced. So I am going to invite you to drop out of your thinking mind for a moment and into your sensing body. And if that feels unfamiliar or uncomfortable, that is okay. Just stay with me, because what happens next may be the most important part of this entire transmission. Close your eyes for a moment if you can, and feel into the space around your heart, not the physical heart, but the energetic center in the middle of your chest. And notice if there is any sensation there. Warmth, pressure, tightness, spaciousness. Just notice without judgment. And as you notice, imagine that space beginning to soften, as if a gentle light is emanating from the center of your chest, expanding outward with each breath, not forcing, just allowing. And as that light expands, notice if anything shifts. Does your breath change? Does your body relax? Does your awareness widen? Just notice and stay with that for a few breaths. And now, from that softened space, ask yourself a question, not intellectually, but somatically, from your body. The question is this: what am I ready to receive? Not what do I want, but what am I ready to receive? And notice what arises. It may be a word, a sensation, an image, an emotion, or nothing at all. Whatever arises, Let it be okay. Do not judge it. Do not analyze it. Just receive it and breathe with it. Because this is the practice of receptivity. This is how you train your system to open, to allow, to trust. And every time you do this, every time you create space for something to arise without forcing or controlling it, you are strengthening your capacity for coherence. You are deepening your ability to receive. And receiving is the foundation of manifestation, because you cannot manifest what you are not willing to receive. And most people are not willing to receive because receiving requires vulnerability. It requires letting go of control. It requires trusting that the field is benevolent, that support is available, that you are worthy without proving anything. And that trust is terrifying for a nervous system that learned the opposite. But it is also liberating, because once you allow yourself to receive, even in small ways, even for brief moments, reality begins to reorganize around that openness. And what was once impossible becomes possible. What was once distant becomes near. What was once effortful becomes natural. So here is my invitation to you as we approach the completion of this transmission. Do not just consume this information. Embody it, practice it, live it. Because transformation does not happen through understanding alone. It happens through consistent embodied practice, through choosing moment by moment to soften instead of brace, to breathe instead of hold, to allow instead of force. And those choices may seem small, insignificant, too subtle to matter, but they are everything. Because every moment of coherence sends a signal, and every signal shapes probability, and probability shapes reality. So practice, not perfectly, not rigidly, consistently. And trust that even when you cannot see results, even when progress feels invisible, the field is responding, the reorganization is happening, the shift is underway, because coherence is not something you achieve, it is something you allow, and allowing is a practice, a discipline, a way of being that must be cultivated until it becomes automatic, until your default state is openness rather than defense, until your baseline expectation is support rather than struggle, until receiving feels safer than chasing. And when that shift stabilizes, when it becomes your new normal, reality will reflect it back in ways that will astonish you. Not because miracles happened, but because coherence manifested. Because your frequency changed, because the field responded, as it always does, as it always will. And so, as this transmission comes to its natural completion, I want to leave you with one final recognition. You are not the same person who began reading this. Something has shifted, something has opened, something has been activated that cannot be deactivated, and that activation will continue to unfold in the days and weeks ahead. In subtle ways at first, through increased synchronicities, through improved timing, through opportunities that arrive without effort, through a quiet sense that reality is becoming more responsive, more supportive, more aligned. And those changes may be so subtle that you barely notice them, or they may be so obvious that you cannot deny them. But either way, they are real, they are happening, they are the result of the shift that occurred as you read these words, as you allowed yourself to receive this transmission, as you opened even slightly to a different possibility. So honor that shift, acknowledge it, and stay connected to it, because coherence is not a destination, it is a practice. And this practice continues. It deepens, it stabilizes, and it transforms everything it touches, including you, especially you, because you are the one who chose to be here, the one who stayed present, the one who allowed something to change. And that choice matters. That choice is the beginning, and from this beginning, everything becomes possible.